You're the one anxious to get going.
I know, but the cameras have to roll.
Okay, we're broadcasting live.
Good evening. This is the Town of Mono Council meeting for Tuesday, October 12th, commencing at 7 o'clock in the evening. This meeting is being conducted by means of electronic participation as permitted by Section 238, subsection 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, and the Town of Mono Procedural Bylaw 2020-42. Council chambers are not yet open to the public. This meeting, of course, can be viewed live or later on the Civic website. If I can just confirm that we have a quorum, it appears that we do. And again, notifying the public that the proceedings are being videotaped and broadcast live. Any members with a pecuniary interest this evening? I will be declaring a small pecuniary interest on a modest installation of parking signs adjacent to my property. And I'll speak to that under the item having to do with parking. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the Town of Mono resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Tiotante, Adawadaron, Anishinaabe, and Anishinaabe peoples. We also acknowledge that the Town of Mono resides within the treaty lands named under Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase of 1818. These traditional territories upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with the statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection with Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways and resources. So I have a motion that Council approves the agenda of this evening's meeting. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor Nix, seconded by Councillor Mangtalo. With the approval of this agenda, are there any items in Schedule A that we should bring forward to new business, other business? Deputy Mayor?
I just wanted to clarify, this is back to the main part of the agenda, that item 6.2 is not just a discussion of the candidates we've received. Did I get it right? 6.2, yeah. But I've already checked with Fred Simpson. That will also be a discussion of the voting process to be used on October 19th.
That's my understanding, to be corrected by our clerk. It's just a discussion of the process, confirming the direction that we're going. And of course, our special meeting to interview each of the candidates is scheduled for next week at this time. Again, are there any items in Schedule A that anyone wants to bring forward to specifically address? Councillor Michaelo?
Your Honor, the item about the Greenwood decision, what was your plan for discussing that?
In camera.
Is that going to be discussed tonight?
Well, you know, there are elements that need to be discussed in camera in terms of legal ramifications, but subject to other members of council, I don't mind a general discussion of that decision as long as it doesn't infringe upon matters appropriately discussed in camera.
I didn't, no, I don't have any need to discuss it at the public meeting. I'm happy with this.
Okay. Anything else from Schedule A?
No.
Then I have a motion on the floor to approve the agenda of session 21-2001 as circulated. Any opposed? And the motion is carried. Next motion is a motion that council approves the minutes of session 2021 as previously circulated. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Martin moves, seconded by Councillor Magdalo. Any discussion or comment on the previously circulated minutes of the last meeting? Seeing none, any opposed to this motion? The motion is carried. We have no proclamations. Any submitted questions?
Yes, Your Worship, we have two questions that were submitted online in advance. And I believe Andrew's going to put those on the screen. In the meantime, I can read that. So the first question is asking about where we stand within Mono with regards to fiber optic cable, and that's what the residents can expect.
I can speak to that. The current installation, which is being taken as we speak, albeit on the west side of Highway 10 at the current time. That's the North Frontenac project, and they have a very optimistic date of completion sometime in March of next year. And that route crosses from Camilla along Mono Centre Road. It goes south on Ontario Street to the 10th Side Road. It then goes east to the first line, I believe, and then south to Hockley, along Hockley to the second line, and then it meets up with the 5th Side Road, going east again to the third line, connecting to Highway number 9. As for the balance of the town, we're still awaiting word from both the federal and provincial government as to whether or not they have approved a number of applications, the major one being Rogers. And Rogers, as everyone will recall, committed to installing fiber optic throughout the town. And then VNet has another application in which speaks to an installation of 90 kilometers within the town. A third application is a combination of fiber and high-speed wireless. So that's where we stand now, but we are somewhat in limbo with regard to those grant applications unless staff have heard anything different.
No, we've not heard anything further from the federal government or the province on the applications that have been made.
Okay. Thank you. And we have a second. Anyone want to comment on that? And question number 2.
Second question is from Mr. Kisser, and he asks what the town's plans are with regards to closing off the access point to Credit Valley Conservation Area from the Island Lake Family Park.
Anyone want to address that? I have defined views on that, but I'm happy to defer to other members of council if they wish to address it. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Just going on memory, as I recall, all we decided to do was to shorten our pathway across the park to X number of meters before it joins the Vicky Barron Trail, which is not exactly closing off access, but it was presumably going to make it somewhat more difficult for cyclists like myself to get from one trail to the other.
My recollection was similar, except that I don't know that we had made the determination to control access by way of a lock. We had certainly spoken to the issue of Blue Heron, but I think staff are still investigating the system by which this could be accomplished. So I think it's a subject that we're going to readdress one way or another once the Island Lake project is complete. Any other thoughts? Okay. Do we have anyone online who would like to ask a question? Okay, seeing none. We have no delegations this evening. The next item is unfinished business and deferred items, and we have our usual list. Any comments or questions about the items on the list? Fred?
Well, I was going to speak to one at the end of the meeting on the joint water management agreement, unless, Mark, you think we should do it now. I was going to speak to it on councillor's business, but we can discuss that at any point.
I think we can speak to it under the councillor's reports if you wish. Anyone else? One thing that I'd like to have council consider adding to the list would be a review and discussion of set fines under our various bylaws, and whether there's an opportunity to see whether they are currently up to date and appropriate and similar to other sized municipalities. I've talked to Mark about this, and apparently there is a consolidation list somewhere, but I'd hate to think that some of our set fines may have been set 10, 15 years ago and haven't been considered since. So if we could add that to the list and maybe leave the date open for the moment, but then hopefully have that come up at a future meeting not too far away. Just wondering how Dave is doing on the large home project.
Excuse me. Sorry, Dave was not able to attend tonight. He had to attend to a family matter. I know when I spoke with Dave last, he knows that that had to be done. I believe he's aiming for the 26th meeting, Your Worship, in October, if not the first meeting in November. So it's on his radar and will be done promptly.
Excellent. Fred?
Just upon reflection, and I'm not sure there's any point in putting this on the list, but we should put, or maybe we should state now that we are going to develop a vaccination policy. Does that need to be on this list, Mark, or is it going to be on our next regular council meeting?
I expect it to be at the 26th meeting. That's always kind of been the plan. So okay. I just saw the counties for the first time this morning, and I expect it'll be there for the 26th meeting.
So there's no need to put it on this list. Okay, fine.
No. Okay. So the next item on the agenda under unfinished business and deferred items is the roadside parking report. And it's fairly detailed, and it has within it a schedule of amendments to the existing areas. But I'll call on Mike to introduce it.
Thank you, Mayor Crewman. So what council has in front of them is sort of an overview of many things that went on this year. They were some council directed wishes, some housekeeping issues that the Public Works Department came across, and some modifications that occurred in the field. to some of the distances that were set by council. There's not, unless council has any questions, there's not really a lot to comment on. All of the signs are in the ground except for 3 of the items on the in the report, and I think it's in a form right now that the clerk can take it, substitute it into a new bylaw, and it becomes enforceable as soon as we get the signs in. So I'd be happy to answer any questions for sure.
Fred?
On the second line, north of County Road 8, just a minute, how many cars can park between, just a minute, between 385 meters and 451 meters? That's 15, that's 66 meters. How many cars can park in that space? I think it's adequate.
What about 6 meters per car? You can get probably 6 in, but I suspect we get anywhere close to 10 cars at that location. If they park diagonally, we'd get in probably 15, but that's pretty well representative of sort of the normal daily use that we see during the week, and I think it was sort of in line with what council was looking for.
Okay, so just guessing that ought to satisfy our local residents who'd like to go in that entrance and do a loop walk. I mean, 10 cars, 6 to a dozen cars if they park diagonally. That should do it, hopefully.
Are there any other questions for Mike on his report? And I think it goes a long way towards cleaning up the areas, creating those cutouts for hopefully for local people to avail themselves of an opportunity without getting a ticket. Brett.
Just in your report, you say there's a problem on the Mono-Angela town line north of Hockley Village. So I just am a bit unclear. Maybe I read it too quickly, Mike, but how have we addressed that? You've put it down in your parking report to be put into our bylaw as no parking. Does that give us the ability to issue tickets there on both sides of the road?
So the former Mayor Ryan and I dealt with this early in the spring when we were having the same lockdown issues. It's a very similar situation to the 5th line Pony Trust Bridge north of Hockley Road, where we had numerous vehicles, a lot of complaints with respect to trespass and also garbage and littering. So the signs, that section of road is maintained by the township of Aggregates, and they have signs up already. We had a discussion early on in the summer with their bylaw enforcement. Unfortunately, there was no real discussion between Mono and Agila as to who would enforce the bylaw. So we've incorporated the existing signs into our bylaw, and that would enable our bylaw enforcement to attend on a complaint-based type of action.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Mike.
Any further comments or questions of Mike? So there's still a few areas where signage needs to be installed. Is that correct, Mike?
You are correct, Mayor Krillman. So Pine Glen to the terminus on first line down at Highway 9, that needs to be signed. A little bit of signage added to the here Ontario, the unsafe hill where people were parking, and then third line would definitely be cleaned up, and I think third line is a good decision, which will be a lot safer for people that are parking there.
Thank you. And I can't and won't comment on that because it is proximate to to my property, albeit it's much more modest than what we had originally contemplated. So if I can, I'm going to ad lib a motion that see how we do this. The motion then would be that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to amend bylaw 2000-12, being a bylaw to provide for the regulation of traffic in the town of Mono, that it be signed by the mayor and clerk for the town of Mono, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Specifically excluding signage on third line south of Dufferin Road 8. Fred Simpson, does that make sense? And then council can vote on that.
I think it might be more appropriate to, as opposed to signage, that we just state that excluding the no parking zone on Schedule 1 on third line south of Mono Center Road. So as opposed to saying signs, we're specifically stating the no parking zone. That's the only change I recommend.
That's better. Okay, do I have a mover for that? And that's moved by Deputy Mayor Nix, seconded by Councillor Mantalo. And I will exclude myself from that vote. Any,
That's the one you're voting on.
that's the one I'm voting on. Okay, pardon me. Any opposed to that? Motion is carried. And now the wording that I'm not voting on. It becomes inclusive of the schedule description, I take it.
Right, so this one would be to the effect that a no parking zone be added to bylaw 2000-1, Schedule 1, specifically no parking zone on third line EHS on both sides from a point 435 meters south of Dufferin County Road 8 to a point 1,350 meters south of Dufferin County Road 8, effective 24 hours a day.
I'll move that.
Thank you. And that's moved by Fred Nix, seconded by Sharon Martin. Any discussion or debate? Again, declaring an interest, which I'll file in writing. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to bylaws, correspondence, new business, additions to the agenda. The first item is a report on municipal modernization funding and also the third intake. Mike or Mark, do you wish to speak to that or Les?
I'd ask Les to put that together, Your Worship. Part of the requirements for us to apply under the third intake for the municipal modernization program is to ensure that we've allocated or spent the money that was provided in 2019, which was the quote unquote no strings attached funding that quickly had strings attached to it. So what we're proposing is I really would like to make an application to complete the servicing study. We were going to follow up on the county study on that last year, and it was delayed. So I'd like to do that, and I'd like to do it with funding. It's 2/3 funding from the feds and the province. And but to do that, we need to allocate the remaining portion of unspent monies in that initial grant. We're proposing at this time to have that allocated to the second salt sand storage dome at the south end of the municipality. There's no set location at this time. We're actively looking for something, but it certainly would make our roads department much more efficient having that station at the south end.
Fred?
I would just point out that the town already owns property in the south end. It's right on Hockley Road, nice paved road. There's a big empty field there and there's some flowers, but we could pave them over. Ralph, supposed to smile, Ralph.
Sorry. That was a very serious look.
Les, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, Mark pretty well covered it all.
If I can, are there not some development charge monies that are also available for us to expend on that?
There is, but we're expecting with the latest surge in property prices, there may not be enough levy at the time that we did calculate the development charge. So this will only add to it. We have the appropriate funding to do the structure properly.
Okay. Any further discussion before I read a motion? So I have a motion that council allocates any unused portion of the efficiency and modernization grant towards development of a sand salt structure in the southern portion of Mono and apply for funding under the Municipal Modernization Program Intake 3. Do I have a mover for that? Sharon Martin is moving it, seconded by Ralph Magdalo. Any further discussion, debate? Any opposed? And that motion is carried.
Thank you.
Last call on discussion brought forward on any of the items under Schedule A.
Your worship,
Is there
you've missed two items on
Oh, yes,
section
sir.
6.
My apologies. Next item on the agenda that I missed is the report to council by our clerk on the nominations received to date, plus the process that we will be following to interview and ultimately decide on the next member of council. So Fred, if you could take it away.
Okay. So as council is aware, we received 10 applications to fill the vacancy. That didn't exceed the level that council had suggested would be considered excessive. So there is no pre-screening. So council will be interviewing 10 people next Tuesday evening. I will be sending out invitations tomorrow to those 10 candidates. The interview process will be as council had laid out in the vacancy policy that they approved a few weeks ago. The order of interviews will be through a random draw. I'll take care of that and then interview them in, let's say, in no preset order. When it comes to the actual voting, in the, I had recommended to council that we used a rank ballot system as the first vote. And then if that didn't lead to a clear victor, then there would be a simple majority type vote. And I'd like to change that recommendation this evening. I would like to suggest we take off the table the idea of a ranked ballot and have that vote as a simple majority vote. Now, this is completely up to council. You get to determine the method that you would like to do, but with 4 people voting for 10 candidates, the math doesn't work out in any way where a ranked ballot provides any advantage whatsoever. So we might as well just do away with that if council's good with that. Through your worship.
Me?
Yes.
I just wanted to tell the rest of council that before tonight's meeting, Fred Simpson very kindly took me by the hand and explained the math about some of the problems in this situation with a ranked ballot. And the math's too complicated for me to repeat, but I understood Fred Simpson's point, and it doesn't lead to any advantage to using a ranked ballot voting system in this circumstance.
Okay. Any further questions or comments of Fred Simpson? Ralph? You're on mute.
I'm quite comfortable with going with the old-fashioned voting technique.
And then
Sharon?
if I get your, oh, sorry, sure. Did you want to say something, Sharon?
Yeah, that's fine to do that. So it's all done in public.
Well, the voting would still be a secret ballot.
Okay.
Okay, so council would interview the 10 candidates. Following that, what I recommend is then we have the voting process. Myself and Andrew Dahmer, let's not kid ourselves, put together a system for the voting. I don't want to go into specifics on that because I want to maintain the integrity of the system so we're not getting people spamming us, but I will send to council the details on how councillors will specifically cast their ballot. But it's going to be fairly simple with just the simple majority. The two of us, myself and Andrew, will independently do counts, compare notes, and if there is a clear victor, reminding council that it takes 3 members of council out of the 4 for a clear victory. We will then announce the winner without reviewing the votes cast for all the other candidates. We'll just announce the victor. Now the question then becomes, what if there isn't a clear winner after that vote? And what I'd like to suggest is that council then go in camera and then they can discuss the pros and cons and benefits of the various applicants without that being an open public discussion, so similar as what would be done for committee positions. And then after that, come out of in camera and have a second vote. And perhaps through that discussion in camera, some opinions had changed and the results of the second vote might be different, and that might lead to a clear winner. And if it doesn't, then we have to have some other method, and it was suggested when this was discussed previously that it may have to come down to a draw. And I'd like confirmation this evening if that's the way council wants to go. That we basically draw the short straw, or in this case, the long straw.
Ralph? You're mute.
I understand you're right, then one of the candidates would need to have 3 votes in order to be the candidate of choice. Why would it not be acceptable if one candidate had 2 votes and all the other candidates had less than 2?
Well, it doesn't meet the definition of a majority, 50% plus 1 vote. It is definitely more, but so it's doable. If that's the way council wishes to go, absolutely. It's more like a provincial or federal election. You don't have to have 50%.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Fred?
Well, I hadn't thought of that, Ralph, until just now, but let's say after the first vote, there's 4 people who get 1 vote each. So there's no clear winner. So we go in camera and I argue for the person I voted for, and then I listen to you other 3 people and you tell me why you voted for someone, and we come out of in camera and we vote again. And I understand Ralph's point. If at that stage, one person gets 2 votes and 2 people get 1 vote each, if we were at that point to say, we have a hung jury again, and we'll draw straws, it may be that a person with only 1 vote becomes our counselor. And Ralph's point is, hold it. 2 of us were picking another person. It's not a majority, 2 out of 4, but 2 out of 4 is better than 1 out of 4. That's your point, Ralph. I could be persuaded.
So 2 out of 4 means that that person there's more interest in that person than anybody else, which is what we're looking for.
Fred Simpson, I think Ralph raises a very good point here.
So does council want to do that on the first vote? Or just in the instance where there's a no clear winner on the first vote, go in camera, and then when they come out, do that on the second vote?
Sharon?
That's the way I see it. The first vote, if everybody's voted for one person and we go in camera and then we come out of camera and then someone gets 2 votes. I like that system better, Fred. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor?
I'm happy. To answer Fred Simpson's question, I think we leave it the way it is on the first vote. And even if somebody gets 2 votes in the first vote, we still say there's no majority, we go in camera, because that gives us the opportunity to discuss the individual candidates out of the public domain. We can say what we want about why we voted for someone or why we didn't vote for someone. Then when we come out, and maybe the vote stays exactly the same, but in that second vote, if someone got 2 votes and 2 people only got 1 vote each, we would pick the person with 2 votes. The one difficulty, Fred Simpson, is if we come out of in camera and vote again and 2 candidates get 2 votes each, then we'd have to pause.
Right. I like any system that doesn't come down to the clerk pulling straws.
Sharon?
I just want to thank Deputy Mayor Nix for explaining what I didn't. That's exactly what I wanted.
Well, hopefully we have a candidate that gets 3 votes first time round, obviously. If that doesn't happen, I have no problem going in camera. I would be very surprised if coming out of that we didn't have somebody with 3 votes. But if we didn't, I think we need to avoid a scenario where the clerk pulls the straw on it. We've had a history in this town of that, and it's not been a happy one for the clerk. And that's going back many, many years.
Your worship, what happens if we come out of in camera and we get a 2-2 vote? What happens? I mean, you don't want the clerk to draw a straw. Why don't we get the mayor to draw a straw?
I suggest that we go back in camera again and have another chat.
Mm-hmm.
And see whether we can resolve our position.
Or what you're really suggesting is for next Tuesday's meeting, I bring my sleeping bag.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's all doable in a reasonable period of time, and I'm optimistic that we're going to end up with a result that avoids a scenario where we're pulling a straw. Just for the benefit of anyone watching or anyone wondering why we are using a secret ballot and going in camera to discuss any situation where somebody fails to get a majority of vote. This is, I think, arguably a matter where an identifiable individual or individuals are being considered and discussed, and our procedural bylaw and the municipal act permits for that. So lest anyone wonder why we're doing it that way as opposed to another way. That's, I think, the rationale. The important thing is that we are interviewing all the candidates in open session. Anything further, Fred?
No, I think we've got a process here with even the opportunity to go back in camera a second time if necessary. There was that one recommendation that was put out that that a member of council could always do that final draw if necessary. It might be problematic technically, seeing as we're not all in one room, but you know, that was put on the floor.
Any,
I would be happy to
appetite for that?
volunteer. I sit in the municipal office building with Fred Simpson and Andrew, and if you want me to draw straws, now you'll have to trust me. That may be difficult, but I'd volunteer to do it.
well, why don't we, is it fair, Fred Simpson, that we cross that bridge when we get to it?
No, absolutely.
Okay, I think that's a reasonable outcome. Just want to, Ralph, Macula, have we lost you? Oh, no, there you are.
I'm back, but I have a question.
Yes.
I'll just confirm that this a special meeting is on the 19th of October and it's a 7 p.m. meeting?
That's correct.
Everyone okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Okay, next item is the community roadside cleanup program. And I had some discussion with staff about that. It is on our to-do list, but the issue, I think, comes down to whether we are trying to organize something for this this fall, or we're almost through fall, quite frankly, or whether we marshal our efforts towards a cleanup in the springtime. Any interest in springtime versus fall? Fred?
Here I go again, at the risk of repeating myself. I know you've put our Director of Recreation in a bit of a difficult spot in one sense, because she did come up with an idea that was vetoed by council a couple of years ago. So it's hard for her to sort of say, hey, here's a plan. I still, as I said the last time we discussed this, I don't mind a community roadside cleanup program if somebody can organize it. But I would point out that we have a number of individuals, including, by the way, myself and my wife, but other people who are, what do you call them? I take care of about 2 kilometers of the 4th line every spring. And I think, as opposed to having a community roadside cleanup on a particular Saturday, you know, we all go and get hordes of people collecting garbage, just encouraging individuals to look after 1 kilometer or 2 of their own road is equally valid. And I think in some ways quite a bit easier to do. But I put that out there again, Your Worship.
Any other comments? Sharon?
I think the point of it, when it was discussed, was to have a community effort, everybody doing something at the same time to bring the community together. But I'd say what Deputy Mayor Nick says is quite true. There are a number of people who do that, and who do that along their property, or they pick something and we don't even know about it. I know I can think of 4 different people who do that in Mono, pick up garbage, and it's certainly not on any specific day, but there's something about doing it as a community effort. Maybe it all gets dropped at one place and then it gets disposed of, or something like that. I don't remember Kim's initial program, what she had in mind, so I can't really speak to that.
If I
Kim,
may,
are
Your
you
Worship.
online?
Yeah.
Yes, Ralph.
I think that Sharon has hit the nail on the head of if a number of people are all doing this together on this particular date, it gets advertised as a Mono community cleanup, whereas if Fred is doing his along the fourth line and maybe I'm doing mine on the seventh line, it's just under the radar. I think it's good for the community to realize that people are doing this as a volunteer activity. So I'm siding with the idea that Kim had, that we select a particular day and try and give this a shot.
Kim?
I did do a little research after presenting the memo to council back on May the 19th regarding what had been put forward to council in 2019 and 2020. And I found that Aaron/Hillsburg ran a program in late July of this year, a community cleanup. It was run by their Environment and Sustainability Advisory Committee. And basically what they did was they ran it on a Saturday morning. And now they had the town of Aaron and Hillsburg where they can use, because they have, they have small urban centers, but we certainly could use either Menora or Mono Center. Probably more appropriately would be Mono Center. And people just come, they don't have to register ahead of time. The municipality hands them out garbage bags and hands them out plastic gloves. And they go off and pick up the garbage over that time frame. They come back, and for each bag of garbage that they pick up, they received a ticket to be entered into a draw. And the draw prizes, which were prizes donated by local community businesses, such as, gift certificates for lunches at restaurants, that sort of thing. But they were all local community businesses that came forward and said, we'd like to be a part of this. And then they had a barbecue at noon as well. So it was that simple. It was come and pick up your garbage bag. Here's your bag, here's your gloves. Go out, pick up some garbage. For every bag of garbage you bring back, you will be given a draw ticket or 5 draw tickets or whatever. And then we will hold the draw at noon along with a barbecue. And that's, mom's your uncle.
Fred?
Well, that sounds wonderful, Kim. And if you could help organize that by getting the plastic gloves and the garbage bags, may I suggest, Your Worship, that we do it on April the 22nd. April 21st of next year is Earth Day. So if we did it on the Saturday right after Earth Day, it kind of fits, right? And I don't care if it's Mono Community Center or Menora Park. Pick one of them and have a barbecue there with that freezer that we bring out, and as we'll see how many hot dogs we serve. But could you organize that, Kim? I'd be glad to stand there and help you. And I know the mayor would volunteer to work the barbecue.
You might regret that.
And I mean, absolutely. And any assistance that council could give as far as getting business owners to donate some type of prizes for the draws, that would be great.
Anyone else?
I know one man who makes some really good pieces of, some really good charcuterie boards, does a fine job at making charcuterie boards, that maybe he might donate one of those. Anyways, I'll just throw that out there.
Mark?
I see the day, Earth Day being thrown out again. Just a caution to council, we used to do this on Earth Day for quite a few years. And we ran into basically a couple of real greasy April 22nds, snowy, sleety, rainy, and cold. And I think we had them 2 or 3 years back to back, and that was when it kind of fizzled. But that's just a caution, and hopefully we'll get a good day this April 22nd. I believe this year was quite good, quite decent on April 22nd.
I will jump in there too, because sometimes snow's not all gone by then, and the garbage isn't as easy to pick up or as seen as readily. I find it interesting that the date that Aaron chose was Saturday, July the 24th, so well into the summer. I'll just leave that. I'm open to whatever you like.
I was going to
Fred?
throw in your work. In the old days, the Hockey Valley Community Association used to run a road cleanup in conjunction with the town. And we would only do certain roads in the southern part of the township. And then actually the town would send out a truck on that same day. So they'd come along the road and their garbage bags would be there and pick it up. Maybe, Kim, your idea of them bringing garbage back to a central point is more efficient. But the other thing we did in those days, John, we informed the OPP, which wasn't that big a deal, but in a technical sense, we are having people on the roadside. It's the road right of way. And I do remember one time, I mean, the OPP cars stopped, right? Gave out some little suckers to the kids that were helping us. So at least they were aware that we were having pedestrians on the road on that particular day. If you think April 22nd is too early, Kim, that's easy. I would only suggest about a July date. By then the grass is so long, you know, it's hard to find the garbage. You've got to do it before the grass starts growing.
I think what we were looking for tonight was a decision between this fall versus next spring, and whether we wanted to pursue it and sort of, you know, I think we're leaning towards the spring, and it's just a question of pinning down a date. I don't know how critical the pinning down a date is tonight, but I think Kim has an idea of what we could be shooting for and planning for as well. Sharon, did you have?
No, that's exactly it. That I don't think it's necessary for us to give a spring date right now. I think we can go ahead. It may end up being June. We don't have to be in the middle of July, but I think there's an opportunity to figure out a date a little later.
Is everyone happy to take that approach? I see some agreement there, Kim. So let's come up with some plans. We'll have lots of opportunity to promote it, sign people up, make arrangements for somebody to operate the barbecue, and so forth.
Okay, I'll put it in the programming lineup for next year for sure.
Okay.
I think the operator's already been chosen, John.
I do too.
Okay. We're down to Schedule A from the standpoint of anything that we would be bringing forward to discuss from Schedule A. Does anyone have anything that they wish to address or have questions about? My goodness, I think I've scared people off, discussing Schedule A because we used to spend so much time on it, and that wasn't my intention. It was just to streamline things. Okay, I have a motion then that we accept Schedule A to this agenda. Do I have a mover? Councillor Martin is the mover, and seconded by Councillor Nix, or Deputy Mayor Nix. Any opposed? The motion is carried. Now we're into reports of members of council and staff. Does anyone have a staff report to present this evening? Mark?
Very quickly, Just so council's aware, next week is, we are doing the emergency management exercise next week. It's going to be based on a fuel shortage in a very cool fall. So there's a lot of different things that will come into play on that. It's being done through the week so that multiple staff have multiple opportunities to participate. I'm just cautioning council, if you do see an email that is basically states exercise, 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 this is an exercise, you don't need to fear and worry about it. So I'm not sure how far the emails will spread, but that's just a caution for council. And other than that, I think Councillor Nix is going to report on the joint water management agreement that we had with Amaranth and Orangeville.
Yes.
And that was all I
Fred?
had. Thank you.
Is Fred?
Yes.
Okay, are you not
Oh,
finished
sorry.
with staff?
Sorry, I'll defer to Kim, and then I'll call council in a moment. Kim, do you have something?
Just a quick update to let council know that at the end of this week or early next week, the landscaping plan for Fieldstone Parquet will be going forward, and met on site today with the landscaper just to decide where all of the trees and shrubberies were going to be planted. Flags have been placed. They were placed out there this morning as to where everything is going to be going in. And with fall being the most opportune time to plant because of the soil conditions and the water conditions, that's when we have decided to move forward with this. So being just not even quite 3 weeks into fall yet, we're going to be moving forward with the plantings at the end of this week or the beginning of next.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's good to know in light of concerns about the planting, and I responded to an email today about the issue of ATVs back there, and suggested that was clearly an OPP issue if they are spotted. ATVs are not allowed onto municipal roadways in Mono, so they're obviously breaking our bylaw and probably provincial statute as well by traveling on roadways to get in there. Any other staff reports? Oh dear. Okay. Council reports. Fred.
Okay, I'll be quick because I think we're supposed to go in camera in 3 minutes. Mark and I did have a meeting with Amaranth, East Garifraxa, and Orangeville. They went through the memo, which my fellow councillors will remember that Mark and I prepared last April. Almost all of Mono's suggestions about how to frame that agreement were agreed to. In fact, it was a very amicable, a very good meeting. My only comment, which I guess I can say publicly, Your Worship, is that given how easy we got over this, I don't know why it's taken 6 months for the other municipalities to respond. The plan is now that Chris Gerardis at Amaranth will take the suggestions we made at our meeting, draw up a clean copy of the agreement and circulate it back. It'll come before council for approval. The other thing I should point out, John, unless you were going to, is that we attended a special county council meeting last week. I was impressed with the robustness and level of debate. It was actually quite good. It was all in camera, so I can't report it to you. But when we came out of in camera, we adopted a resolution that asked staff to develop a vaccination policy, and it's going to be the toughest vaccination policy possible. It's going to be basically the short term is vaccinate or terminate, which I know is pretty severe, but that's what we decided. That policy, well, John said he just got a copy this morning. I haven't seen the written copy of the policy yet, but it's my expectation that we will be bringing this policy back to Mono Council for our second meeting in October, and Mono, I assume, well, at least it'll be considering whether it passes or not, I can't say, the same policy, vaccinate or terminate. One other final thing, Your Worship, the Headwater Streams Committee took out what I hope is the last giant hogweed of the season this morning.
Wow. Any other council reports? Well,
The final chapter of the stream signage is taking place. I think it would be more appropriate for Mike to, Mike, we talked about this earlier, for you to give us a little report on this.
Sorry, Councillor Menklo, I forgot to step in there. So we're about 80% installed now. We focused on the naming around the Huckley Valley first off, so we could catch the majority of our visitors on the leaf viewing season, and we plan to finish this over the next couple weeks, and they look good. They help everybody name the streams, and it's a great project. So it's going good, and we've had some generally some good comments from the residents that live in the vicinity of that area and beyond. So it's great. I think it's a good project.
I'd just like to add, I did a little tour of southern Mono on Thanksgiving Monday. I thought it was an appropriate thing to do, as well as check out the trees. And I must say, I'm very impressed, Mike, with the placement, the selection of where to put a sign is very arbitrary, related to any particular a bridge or a waterway crossing. And I think that, I believe Matt Noble's responsible for that, and I think he's doing a really good job. The signs, you know, the signage project, just to remind you, was somewhat difficult because of the need to be sure what was the appropriate name for a stream. And so in some places we have put a name and then said a subsequent name underneath it. So there's the main name, and then underneath it says known locally as such and such. So that is our way of trying to manage the fact that there may be two valid names for any particular crossing. I think there's about 32 crossings within Mono that have been named. And I'm delighted to see these here, and I think you're doing a great job, Mike.
Fred?
Just one disquieting note, Mike and Ralph. LPAT has renamed Sheldon Creek the Shelburne Creek, so you're going to have to change some of your signs.
Good reading, Fred.
Very good. I had occasion to jump into a Facebook debate about our signage, and I wrote a defense of what we were doing and how we were doing it, and also put it in the context of the grant monies made available to us. And I have to say that the residents of Mono and others came out in vast majority of cases in favor of what we were doing, understanding the touristic value and also the celebration of our natural heritage. There were a handful of naysayers, but generally speaking, people were very, very impressed and very positive. Any other reports of councillors? I'd just like to say that I had discussions with a number of people about the whole section of oral reports of staff and council, and I expressed the view that we should probably be briefer and raise the really important issues on our plate. And I didn't mean or intend to scare anyone off making a report if they feel it necessary. And please also know that if you don't make a report, it doesn't mean that we think you're not, working. We know you're working.
What you're trying to say politely is you didn't hear the Headwater Streams Committee kill the giant hogweed this morning. I'll take the message.
That's important stuff. That hogweed is nasty stuff. And, it's also important to know what our committees are doing. So I have no issue with that. And I don't consider it in any way trivial. So we have arrived at 8:04. And I see our council is waiting in the wings. So I have a motion that Council move into a closed meeting pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended at 8:05 p.m. With regard to a matter of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, Greenwood Aggregate Ontario Land Tribunal decision number 239 subsection 2 subsection F. Do I have a mover for that motion? Moved by Deputy Mayor Nix, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any opposed to going in camera? Oh, Mark?
Yeah, just before you do the vote, I don't think Kim or Les are required for that discussion, so I was going to release them if that's fine with you, Your Worship.
Absolutely. Okay, so there's no opposed, and Andrew, if we could go offline.
we're back live.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I have a motion that we rise from in-camera session at 8:42 p.m. and that council accept the advice from the town solicitor and direct staff and town solicitor to proceed accordingly. Do I have a mover for that motion? Moved by Deputy Mayor Nix, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any opposed? And that motion is carried. Just one last call on any items on Schedule A. Notices of motion. Any notices of motion this evening? Okay, I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Mono in session 2021 held on the 12th of October 2021, that it be signed by the mayor and the clerk, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover? Councillor Mankelo moves, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:43. Do I have a mover for that? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mankelo, any debate? Any opposed? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.